Hello, my name is Alejandra, and today the claim I am responding to is Zachary. The claim I am talking about today is decreasing humankind's direct destruction of the rainforest will not be sufficient to protect its future sustainability, as indirect destruction will succeed in detrimentally reducing it in the years to come. In simplified words, the claim is stating that reducing the destruction of rainforests is not enough to save our planet from global warming. It must be put to a complete halt. His secondary claims are, in order to ultimately counter substitution of forests with semi-arid geography due to changing climate, we must cut down on the impact toward global warming. His second claim and his last claim is, in order to stop deforestation, another means of obtaining resources must take its place. In other words, we must use renewable energy. I deny the premise of his claims because of the lack of grounds and the credibility of where the sources come from. So first, I'm going to discuss about how the first claim about the halt in deforestation will cut down global warming lacks credible grounds and how its supporting claims are insufficient in helping his argument. Second, I'm going to respond to the last claim about renewable energy by explaining how it is irrelevant. Lastly, I'm going to be discussing about the key elements he did not mention in the argument. Okay, so the first claim, which was again the substitution of forests and how we have to cut down on deforestation so that it can help lower global warming. So the article used in the first claim, which is climateandweather.net, it didn't have an author, and the statistics given did not really explain the study itself and didn't explain where the study came from. So the lack of credibility can make the argument weaker since we don't actually have a reason to believe in it. Secondly, he states that 17% of greenhouse emissions are caused by deforestation. However, in none of the articles, I found that information, therefore making the statement a bit unreliable. There is a small truth to this, however, because deforestation itself is not even one of the leading causes of greenhouse emissions, but I'll explain why it is a small truth. According to Laura Reynolds, who is a food and agriculture staff researcher at the Woolwatch Institute, she states, the largest source of methane emissions is fermentation or the digestion of organic materials by livestock, predominantly beef cattle. This makes agriculture the leading cause and deforestation part of the portion of it, because deforestation is a leading after in order to have agriculture. So in the second claim, which was how we have to rely on renewable resources, so things like solar power, according to a list of main ways to halt deforestation by Jen Savage, who is an ecologist and writer and has a master's in environmental education, renewable energy is not on the list. The claim of using more solar panels and windmills is irrelevant simply because we are already using it and more people are adapting to it every day. Despite this change, there must be a different course of action which has not been listed. Now I'm going to be talking about the key elements that he failed to mention. So in this speech, it's not addressed that deforestation has a leading cause. The leading cause of deforestation is agriculture. In a report by the United Nations and other leading agencies, it stated that not only did livestock play a major role in global warming, it is the #1 cause of resource consumption, which includes deforestation. Well, this is important because it doesn't really connect to how energy is relevant. So things like, other things that would really help the not help global warming, but halt it, is having something that's not widely accepted. So for example, a vegetarian diet being practiced in every household. Eating less meat, at least for several weeks during a year, can have a huge impact. And this was studied by 2 agriculture experts in a documentary called Cowspiracy. And in conclusion, the halt of deforestation is not enough to reduce global warming substantially because of other relevant leading factors like agriculture and other causes of greenhouse emissions. Thank you.
All right. Well, the proposition was so convoluted to begin with that you have to paraphrase it, which was okay. Then we understand basically what the argument's going to be. And then you list the secondary points. I couldn't figure out what the first of the secondary points was. Didn't make much sense. And then you came back to the second point, which is basically deforestation is not the source of the problem alone. Then you come back to that first point again. Oh my gosh, it's like I got a preview, then I got a preview of the responses, and then we finally get to the secondary points. That's a little too complicated, a little too confusing. So I know you're trying to keep it organized, but I think you need to simplify a little bit because it's overdoing the point that's going on. When we get to the first of the supporting points, basically you're suggesting that there is, the advocate is suggesting that there is no real answer to this unless we stop deforestation, which, by the way, sounds like it's kind of the argument you're making at the end. But the question is, how do we stop deforestation? And your argument seems to be we all become vegetarians, and that'll solve the problem. I'm not exactly sure that these are competitive with each other. They could both happen, and it wouldn't be mutually exclusive. I think you do have a good part of the argument that says that the deforestation represents a small part of the problem of global warming or climate change and those sorts of issues. You say that the advocate doesn't really, they mentioned the 17% statistic. You say that's not particularly clearly cited. And then you come back with the argument that says that the largest source of this problem is cattle ranching, basically raising animals for consumption as food products, and that the deforestation is a part of that process. So I'm not exactly sure that that denies the argument that the advocate's saying. Perhaps they didn't give us as full a picture as they might have, but if deforestation is part of the cattle production process, then why is it not a contributor to that particular problem? I'm not sure. Your argument seems to be that we wouldn't be able to control it, I guess, unless we controlled the end product as opposed to just the one process that's going on there. I guess that's the argument that's being made there. And then the other argument talks about, that was a little bit clearer, that says it's not really power generating resources that we have to worry about. It's this other stuff that is really the real source of the problem. Your explanation about why, we're already using these other kinds of resources, that might be true, but it doesn't suggest that we couldn't use them more or that we couldn't diminish the ones that have negative consequences. We're back to the same argument again that says that it's agriculture that is the biggest contributor to these particular problems, and of course deforestation is a part of that agricultural process because they are either feeding the animals or clear cutting the areas for the animals. So that seems to be making the same argument that the advocate's talking about. I think your response here needs to be a little more straightforward, and instead of like looking for a hair to split. The vegetarian diet as an alternative solution. If this was a plan, and we were doing a policy argument, and the advocate is saying we need to stop cutting down rainforests and we need to go to alternative energy, and you were offering a counter plan that says, no, we need to all become vegetarians, then I could see how this is all maybe applicable to a policy argument. But when it comes down to it, all of these things seem to be contributing to the climate issues that we are faced with and the potential threats that we have as a result of that. and it's only a small argument over, which comes first or which is the most important, and I'm not sure that that gets you very much on an issue of fact. Okay, thank you.